On Africa 24 English, the African Union Journal is presented to you by Afrexim Bank.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for this new edition of the African Union Journal dedicated to the prospects for the year ahead as 2026 begins with many challenges. The EU is accelerating economic development and the strengthening of strategic partnerships at the heart of its continental agenda. Reports and analysis follows shortly in this journal. The Africa-Caribbean Trade and Investment Forum 2025 resulted in a historic commitment to strengthen economic relations between Africa and the Caribbean. Key announcements include the creation of a Caribbean Exim Bank, a $250 million Sustainable Development Fund, a regional payment system, and a proposed Africa-Caribbean Free Trade Area. More on this report with Catherine Gombe.
Africa continues to grow strongly thanks in particular to the constant and reinforced efforts to encourage trade with the rest of the world. Strengthening African-Caribbean cooperation also remains a priority for leaders in both regions. Given the vast opportunities offered by the African Continental Free Trade Area, the expansion of trade between Africa and the Caribbean is essential, particularly for promoting historical, cultural, and political ties and accelerating trade and investment links between the two regions.
And the need to ensure that we continue to resource and support the ability of the Caribbean and Africa to get to each other. And we've done so by hosting this event. Many of you who are here because of direct chartered flights. I was in Abuja not too long ago. Again, it was via a direct flight. And as Professor Orama said, it proves the concept. That if we are deliberate and if we are intentional, there is no reason why we can't begin, even if it's baby steps, to begin the process of deliberately traveling between Africa and the Caribbean. It took me exactly 8 hours and 56 minutes to fly from the Morris Bishop International Airport to Abuja. It's about the same time to get to London. And I can tell you the reception in Abuja was a lot warmer and friendlier.
Despite deep historical and cultural ties, Africa and the Caribbean continue to trade less than 1% of their exports between them, a striking reminder of untapped potential. The 4th African-Caribbean Trade and Investment Forum Active 2025, held on July 28 and 29, 2025 in Grenada, marked a significant step towards creating great economic integration between Africa and the Caribbean in the context of growing global uncertainty.
We take certain steps to enhance the integration. That ought to come naturally. And in that integration process, one of those areas which we think we should reinforce is the payment system that we now have. You would see from what happened, what we now call the global crisis caused by the events in the Ukraine, that one of the very first actions that was taken by the global West against Russia was to cut it off the payment system. So that tells you that it is a very vital element of the trade. Payment itself, finance is the lifeblood of the trade. It is what drives people. So if we get that payment system fully integrated, the payments can happen easily, and we get the African investors to see the Caribbean as an opportunity. Then as they invest more, the drive towards our brother Wamkele here, the drive towards his African free trade area that includes the Caribbean will become more natural. It will happen on its own.
Among the main resolutions adopted by the two parties are commitments such as a feasibility study for a Caribbean investment and money transfer bank Exim, the launch of its $250 million Grain Resilience and Sustainability Fund and the Caribbean Payment and Settlement PAPS projects inspired by the African PAPS, which will enable real-time cross-border transaction in local currencies. It should be noted that the 2024 edition of Active held in the Bahamas was a resounding success, resulting in the signing of more than 15 agreements and a memorandum of understanding worth more than $4 billion.
Whether it be road infrastructure or electronic infrastructure, all of these infrastructures must contribute to the blossoming of the African and Caribbean economies. From now on, we must no longer talk only about Africa as a continent, but also about the Caribbean as the sixth region of Africa, which is of the utmost interest to us.
Conventions and memoranda of understanding were also established during the forum to strengthen and intensify collaboration between the two regions. In their conclusions, regional leaders promised not to settle for a simple exchange, but to put in place institutional structures to ensure progress and usher in a new era of Pan-African and Afro-Caribbean economic sovereignty.
We remain glued with Africa-Caribbean relationship with focus on the high potential sectors like agri-food and fertilizers. Trade between Africa and the Caribbean still remains minimal today, but this relationship could experience a strong growth by 2028. For both regions, this is a major opportunity to deepen and diversify economic ties amid the turbulence of global trade. Details on the stakes with Sarah Ajay.
In the midst of a fragile global trade environment marked by economic crisis and geopolitical tensions, Africa and the Caribbean are joining forces to establish a strategic partnership. According to Afreximbank, the combined export potential of the two regions could reach $1.8 billion by 2028. The goal is to strengthen South-South cooperation and create new economic opportunities. This momentum is actively supported by Afreximbank, the African Export-Import Bank, which is stepping up initiatives to boost trade expected to grow strongly in the coming years. It is very important, which is why Afreximbank thinks about it as something that should take priority space. What has happened over time is this is an area that has been overlooked by those who are responsible for making decisions. But as important as it is, nobody has taken time to devote time to it. With the opening of a regional office in the Caribbean, Afreximbank aims to ease access to financing and promote cross-regional investments. This initiative seeks to reduce both regions' dependence on external markets, which are often vulnerable to global fluctuations. We never have an opportunity to tell the story the way it is or the way we want it to be. But with Afreximbank's presence in the Caribbean, what we are now trying to do is to take our future in our own hands, to try and see how we can rewrite this narrative to bring ourselves face to face to each other and explore the huge opportunities that exist in both regions. According to data from the International Trade Center, despite a shared history and culture, trade between the two regions remain very low, with only 0.1% of African exports going to the Caribbean and 1% of Caribbean exports going to the continent. Strengthening cooperation could offer new opportunities to millions of citizens in both regions.
Faced with the need to diversify their economic partnerships, Africa and the Caribbean are stepping up their trade relations by launching concrete initiatives. The strategy is based on direct corridors between two regions.
Economic relations between Africa and the Caribbean are experiencing a new dynamic driven by innovative initiatives aimed at establishing direct trade corridors between the two regions. Among these, the Africa-Caribbean Maritime Corridor project stands out. This maritime route aims to reduce transport costs, shorten delivery times, and facilitate the exchange of goods and services. The two blocs thus wish to strengthen the ties through sustainable economic exchanges.
Is obviously very challenging, but it's the best environment for us as Africans because it compels us to reflect very deeply on where we stand in the world. We've been on the periphery of the global economy since the establishment of the Bretton Woods system. We all know that. But I don't think that there has been quite as drastic a shift in the geo-economic setting as we've seen over the last 5 years.
Despite significant potential, trade between Africa and the Caribbean remains hampered by obstacles such as tariff barriers, high custom duties, and visa restrictions. To remedy these, 7 Caribbean countries signed an agreement with Afreximbank in 2022, supported by the African Development Bank, aimed at facilitating trade, simplifying custom procedures, and securing investments.
That will require that our financial institutions must step in and invest in Africa's industrialization, invest in Africa's infrastructure, because as you said, nobody else will do it.
These initiatives are paving the way for a new era of Afro-Caribbean economic collaboration by putting in place appropriate logistics infrastructure and harmonizing trade policies that the regions can build a mutually beneficial strategic partnership.
Even go as far as beginning to talk about opening up discussions for a free trade agreement, helping us to also promote joint activities in the area of the creative industry, in the area of technology, and so on.
The outlook is promising. According to the International Trade Center, trade between Africa and the Caribbean could reach $1.8 billion by 2028. To realize its potential, governments and economic actors must intensify their efforts and mobilize resources to make the Africa-Caribbean corridor a lever for sustainable economic transformation.
For decades, Africa has been exploited for its natural resources and as a pawn in geopolitical games, which has hindered its autonomy. Now the time for change has come, as African nations are seeking a win-win partnership based on reciprocity, clarity, and mutual benefits. Sarah Yemele reports on these takes.
Historically, African countries have often been exploited for their natural resources with profits that did not always benefit local populations. This situation has led to a growing awareness and a desire to establish more balanced international relations. Today, a paradigm shift is needed, with African nations aspiring to equitable partnerships based on mutual respect, transparency, and shared interests.
Il est temps que nos administrations, nos politiques,
it is time for administrations and politicians to make the necessary efforts to truly integrate our economies, because if we fail to do so, we will remain in a community of poverty. I want to say to our fellow citizens that if we do not share the same democratic ideal, if we do not share the same ideal of freedom, if we do not share the same political ideal, it is less serious than not sharing the same economic ideal. Economics is about survival, poverty, and the sea of all disasters. If we fail to lift our countries out of poverty, democracy will be compromised.
De toutes les catastrophes. Si nous ne parvenons pas à sortir nos pays de la pauvreté, la démocratie sera compromise.
Despite its wealth, Africa does not fully benefit from its natural resources, which are often monopolized by foreign interests. Resource extraction causes environmental degradation and armed conflicts, exacerbating poverty and misery in extractive areas. Foreign powers and emerging countries are investing heavily to secure their supplies, often to the detriment of local populations. Foreign investment in Africa jumped 75% to a record $97 billion in 2024, supported by liberalization and facilitation efforts across the continent, according to the latest UN World Investment Report published on June 15, 2025.
Faire venir des usines.
How can you help us attract factories and produce energy for local processing? We have excellent waterfalls, such as the Boué waterfall, which can generate 650 megawatts. Now is the time to work together to build Gabon's economy, and investing here is a real opportunity. There is no risk involved. We are a peaceful country, and I guarantee everyone's investments.
With its 30 million kilometers square, its demographic width, and its mineral water, energy, and land resources, Africa has the potential to sustain its development efforts and contribute to global growth. To enable African countries to access more resources to finance their development, the head of state invites partners to have a fair perception of the intake. The head of state invite partners to have a fair perception of the investment risks on the continent.
Aujourd'hui, nous abordons, on va dire, une ère nouvelle que je traduirais même moi par
Today we are entering what I would call a new era, a new world order, one in which African countries want to be valued for who they are in their relationships with their various partners, whether it be the Russian Federation or other Western countries, such as France, Great Britain, or even the United States.
Pays occidentaux tels que la France, la Grande-Bretagne ou même les États-Unis.
The quest for equitable partnerships is a strategic necessity for Africa to take control of its development. It involves asserting sovereignty, building local expertise, and renewing international dialogue. According to experts, it is by speaking as equals that Africa will be able to become a fully recognized player on the world stage.
Over the last 20 years, China has become sub-Saharan Africa's largest bilateral trading partner. China being a major actor in Africa's economy, the African Union organized an Economic, Social and Cultural Council in partnership with the Chinese NGO Network for International Exchanges. The P2P dialogue aimed to deepen mutual understanding and practical collaboration between Africa and the Chinese people.
The relationship between China and the African continent has been ripening over the years. A recent deceleration of economic growth means they will now need to take a more prudent approach if they want to maintain future trade relation and investment flows. It is in this line that the Economic, Social and Cultural Council, in collaboration with China NGO Network for International Exchanges, organized a two-day dialogue bringing together civil society organizations from Africa and China, as well as the business community and the academia, to foster friendship, cultural exchange, and sustainable development.
ECOSOC is ready to rally the voices of the African citizenry, be it for the C20, the B20, or the T20. ECOSOC is ready to learn, but also join forces with Chinese think tanks to lead its support to Africa's G20 presidency. Let me conclude with this. Today's conversation will be wide-ranging, yet each one returns to one simple, powerful principle, that we are stronger together when every voice is heard.
The platform was also meant to promote participatory dialogue, collaboration and knowledge sharing between communities as part of efforts to build a more people-centered Africa-China partnership. At the same time, China has also emerged as the largest bilateral creditor to Africa, providing African countries with a new source of infrastructure, mining and energy financing. China's share of total sub-Saharan African external public debt was less than 2% before 2005, but grew to about 17% or $134 billion by 2021.
China and Africa have always stood together through thick and thin, and we are true partners in win-win cooperation. Our mutual achievements and shared development vividly demonstrate the solidarity and collaboration of the Global South.
The new commitments signify a shift away from direct infrastructure financing towards trade credit for regional exports while promoting an increase in private investment.
Our partnership has strengthened and was anchored in the principles of equality, solidarity, shared prosperity, and a common vision for a more just and better global order. When African and Chinese civil societies come together, they unleash a powerful force for transformative change.
According to experts, better coordination and synergy would guarantee mutual benefits and sustainable growth for Africa and China. To realize this immense potential, the two regions must give priority to greater coordination between the African Continental Free Trade Area and the Belt and Road Initiative, a Chinese project aimed at improving communication links and cooperation on a transcontinental scale.
The second edition of the East Africa Summit on Global Health Security is scheduled to take place in Nairobi, Kenya from January 27 to 29, 2026. This year's summit will focus on the theme Catalyzing Collaboration and Local Production of Health Products for Africa's Sovereign Health Security. The event anticipates bringing together approximately 1,500 participants to deliberate on the critical challenges and emerging opportunities within the East African health security landscape. The organization of the summit is a collaborative effort involving the Kenyan Ministry of Health and key African institutions, notably the African CDC Regional Coordination Center for East Africa, an agency of the African Union. Abuja, the capital of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, is scheduled to host the meeting of senior officials of the Rabat Process on Migration and Development, also known as the Euro-African Process, from January 28 to 29, 2026. This event will mark the end of Nigeria's tenure as president of the process, a role it has held since January 2025. Established in 2026, the Rabat Process serves as a forum for dialogue on migration between African states and the European Union, bringing together over 50 countries from Europe and Africa, along with the European Commission and the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. The Southern African Development Community Sustainable Energy Week in 2026 is scheduled to take place in Victoria Falls, Zimbabwe from February 23 to 27. The event is a collaborative effort between the SADC Center for Renewable Energy and the Energy Efficiency and the SADC Secretariat. It will serve as a platform for various stakeholders, including policymakers, public institutions, NGOs, academics, regulators, development partners, financial institutions, and private sector representatives to deliberate the advancement of renewable energy within the SADC region.
Richard Atias, a globally recognized strategic and founder of Richard Atias and Associates, has designed over 1,000 international events and has advised leaders and states in strengthening their influence. Currently serving as president of the executive committee and interim CEO of the F2 Institute, he dedicates his expertise in shaping the brightest minds of a positive impact on humanity.
With an impressive career behind him, Richard Atias has become a leading global strategist known for his ability to build influential networks and forge public-private partnerships. As the founder of Richard Atias and Associates, he has masterminded over 1,000 high-profile events, including the Jordan Festival and the UNESCO L'Oréal Women in Science program, alongside major corporate initiatives. Through these efforts, Atias has proven his skill in driving innovations and channeling investment into emerging markets. He remains a strong advocate for mutually beneficial partnerships aimed at advancing the development of Africa. So today, what is important is to implement, as you say, this strategy that is clear on investment in Africa by creating win-win partnerships. Richard Atias currently serves as president of the Executive Committee and interim CEO of the Future Investment Initiative, a global non-profit organization with a central mission to create a positive impact on humanity. Driven by an innovative vision, he promotes creativity in the field of artificial intelligence to enable the continent to fully leverage its talents. Moreover, as you have noticed, we don't place a very important emphasis on artificial intelligence or intelligence in all these seasons and topics. However, at the FII Institute, this non-profit foundation we created several years ago, we launched a clear initiative aimed at mobilizing countries, political leaders, entrepreneurs, and funders to ensure that artificial intelligence has an inclusive strategy. In 2024, Richard Atias became special advisor to the Public Investment Fund, and in 2025, he was appointed president of the Executive Committee of the FII Institute. As a trusted advisor to leaders and head of state, he has played a key role in promoting nations and destinations, including Dubai and Senegal, positioning these territories on the global stage. Countries like the Democratic Republic of Congo, countries like Côte d'Ivoire, countries like Equatorial Guinea, countries like Angola, and all those fortunate enough to have extremely rich underground resources must have a clear, structured strategy with deadlines because the partners are there, the partners are available.
Parce que les partenariats sont là, les partenariats sont possibles.
Born in Morocco in 1959, Richard Attias is a civil engineer with a master's degree in mathematics and physics. He began his career at IBM before founding several companies in the IT services sector. He then spent 10 years at Publicis as executive president of Publicis Event Worldwide before becoming the CEO of Dubai Event Management Company.
By focusing on economic integration, innovation, and strong partnerships, the African Union intends to transform the continent's ambition into concrete actions that serve its people. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. You can find latest updates in Africa on our website, africa24tv.com, and on the application, My Africa 24. Wishing you a great year ahead.
On Africa 24 English, the African Union Journal is presented to you by Afrexim Bank.